It is Thursday, August 13th, 2026, coming to you from America's beautiful North Coast, from the shores of Lake Superior. This is The American Dissent. I'm your host, Sam Martin.
And I'm Jen Schultz.
Before we dive in, please subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button, leave a comment. It all helps as we begin our journey here on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, please leave a 5-star review. Thank you ever so much. On today's show, I'm joined once again by our friend JP Gresh. This time, we talk about the latest in the Iran war and its larger ramifications. Trump continues to insist that the U.S. has complete control over the Strait of Hormuz, even though it appears that nobody anywhere else in the world believes him. U.S. long-range and interceptor missiles are nearing complete depletion, and in bombshell reporting from the Navy Times and the Stars and Stripes, sailors aboard the USS Lincoln, an aircraft carrier that's been deployed to the Middle East since last November, have been attempting to jump overboard and self-harming. We'll be talking about all that and more with JP. In the news, the CIA is reported to have had low confidence in the Israeli intelligence that led Donald Trump to secretly deplane from Air Force One in Turkey. It seems that this is not the first time Israeli intelligence reports claiming Iran was planning to assassinate the president was used to encourage his belligerence toward Iran. It is ironic, of course, that in a joint operation between Israel and the United States that began the current war, the two nations actually did assassinate the leader of Iran. Israel, meanwhile, continues its assault on the civilian population of Gaza, as yet another child died in an Israeli strike Wednesday night. In the West Bank, Israel's actions appear aimed at creating similar conditions to those in Gaza prior to the genocide, as they allow settlers to destroy Palestinian homes, start fires, and kill livestock with no consequences. Israeli forces are also setting fires and destroying homes in southern Lebanon. A third detainee has died while in custody at the ICE facility in Newark, New Jersey, known as Delaney Hall. Jose Sharon Raxon died as a result of what is reported as a medical emergency. This comes only 9 days after the unexplained death of Edwin Lopez Cornejo at the same facility. The New Jersey's Attorney General's office opened up a civil rights investigation into that facility just this past Friday. In the fallout of the razor-thin win of David Crowley over DSA candidate Francesca Hong in the Wisconsin gubernatorial primary, Crowley and the Democratic establishment appear unwilling to embrace any of Hong's most popular policy positions and are signaling that they will take her voters for granted this fall. Lastly, voters in Alaska, Florida, and Wyoming have their primaries next week. We'll go over what races we'll be watching in those states. These headlines and more up for discussion on today's Dissent. Jen, what's new?
Oh, man. Sorry I didn't make it to that interview, but it sounds great. I'll have to listen to JP.
Yes, everyone stick around. I would say it's a fun discussion, but these topics aren't so fun. What's going on in Iran and all that stuff. But it's very enlightening, that's for sure.
Yeah, let's talk about politics and get that out of the way, because I know something you said you wanted to continue talking about. I will say that, I don't know if we mentioned this yesterday, but for the first time in Minnesota, we have 4 women running for top seats, governor's race and the U.S. Senate, and will definitely be the first time Minnesota will have a female governor. So people are really excited about that. I know I am.
What are the other? So governor, senator.
There's both the Republican and Democrat running.
Oh, I see.
For governor, women, and in the U.S. Senate seat, both candidates are women. So we have 4 women running for 2 top seats in Minnesota.
So regardless of results,
and there's just a lot of women running for governor's positions right now, which is great, and they're winning in the last 2 specials. So it's great to see more women decide to run for office.
Indeed. Although running for office is not particularly new for a lot of people that run for governor, but certainly not for Amy Klobuchar. She's been in office for an awfully long time. But
yeah, well, she's good at it. She's good at her job.
But I got to say, one place where a woman was not successful in running for governor was Wisconsin. And Jen, something is worrying me a little bit here. I don't know if you saw this, but Tony Evers, Wisconsin State Fair is happening right now in Milwaukee, or just outside of Milwaukee. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's been going on since August 6th. Actually, it ends this weekend. But so Tony Evers went on a radio show at the fair, and keep in mind that Craig yesterday told us that the big reason David Crowley was able to win was because Tony Evers went all in for Crowley, and he was asked in this radio interview what his message was to Francesca Hong's supporters. His response is not good. He said,
what was it?
He said, they have to play along.
Wow.
That's bad. And then, without being asked, he goes on to say, he says, will Crowley get behind the things that Hong talked about? No. And Crowley, indeed, for his part, doubled down on his refusal to slow down AI data center facilities in the state. And he's also getting advice not to campaign with Francesca Hong or even allow her to campaign for him, which he suggested he would do, and she is willing and ready to do that. And so I'm worried, and I'm going to say it now, and you can disagree, that's fine.
Oh, I am very worried about this race. I have a feeling Tom Tiffany is going to win, or it's going to be a very, very close race, and they will spend both sides a ton of money to pick up this seat. So
I think this is
those
trouble,
are not
though.
Okay. Those are not great messages from Evers, and Crowley might want to distance himself from him, but he was a popular governor, so he's going to have to, maybe just work on the messaging there and keep it tighter. But why not use Francesca Hong to get her supporters to volunteer? She brought in thousands, like 7,000 folks were door knocking.
And as I said yesterday, nobody in the history of gubernatorial primaries in the state of Wisconsin ever received more votes than Francesca Hong, except for David Crowley. It's huge number of voters. And, if there's anything we learned from 2024, Jen, is you cannot take your voters for granted. You just can't do it. I assumed the Democrats had learned that in 2016. Shame on me for assuming.
Well, I think the game that Evers was talking about is this game of we can't let Tom Tiffany win. And many of the moderates believe we need a moderate to win, and that is the game that they are playing. But in this case, David Crowley is a moderate who's becoming more moderate, moderating even more if he's not talking about guidelines and restrictions on data centers. So,
some people say
he doesn't understand that he should take the opposite side of Tom Tiffany because it's popular to be against data centers.
I agree with you. I don't get it. I don't get this.
I don't know.
Like, again, it's not an excuse to say that Ken Martin didn't come up with a proper, autopsy report. So therefore, we have no idea why Kamala Harris lost. I mean, that's inexcusable. She took a lot of voters for granted, and she lost to the couch more than she lost to Donald Trump. And I believe that wholeheartedly because the loss in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania was narrow enough to suggest that people staying home because they were angry. And again, and I had this, you weren't with me when I was talking to Joel Cypress, but this is what Joel and I definitely were both of one mind when we said that we shouldn't blame voters. I mean, politicians have a job to do, and that is to win over voters. And when Tony Evers says, oh, well, Francesca Hong's people are just going to have to play along.
Well, this is what I think will might save the day is that people remember what happened under Scott Walker, and the unions remember, and they don't want Tom Tiffany. And so they're going to go vote, and they're going to vote in record numbers, I think. And that is what's going to get the Democrats elected, including Crowley. But it's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough. And they got to continue to motivate people to go to the polls. But I just think that
And that's
number
the
of
issue.
Democrats that voted versus Republicans, I just think they have the wind at their back but you know what? So maybe we didn't do enough ops research on Crowley either. Anything could happen where it gets put in jeopardy. So my guess is he hasn't been completely vetted.
That might be.
Mm-hmm.
I just, it worries me so much, the whole electability argument. And now they're saying these things and doing things that were one of the reasons Harris couldn't get elected. It's just, what are we doing? It's just like, why drop the ball the day after why say these things the day after? Oh, they'll just have to play along. I mean, that's just taking voters for granted. No, give them a reason to vote for you, please. I'm begging you. But I
haven't seen any Crowley's post-election interviews. Have you seen any?
I just saw the one where he said he would accept Francesca Hong's support and help in the campaign. Now, like I said, I don't know whose advice he's listening to, but there are lots of people advising him not to work with Francesca Hong. And I think that's just insanity. Why wouldn't you work with the second highest vote getter in Wisconsin history in a gubernatorial primary?
If she doesn't, he may not want her help, but is she going to be out there organizing people to help Dems win? Yes. She's not going to just walk away and go hide somewhere.
She built an engine, and she doesn't want to let go of that.
Right. Maybe she'll run against Ron Johnson. We'll see.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Then I would like to see what Bernie Sanders and AOC do or say.
Right, because Bernie's excuse was, I don't get into governor's races.
Yeah.
Yeah, if she's running for federal office, that could be very different.
She's gonna run for something because, like you said, she built this huge movement that supports her, and she probably. But the other thing Craig I think said is she probably would have won if those 60,000 spoiled votes, those early votes. A lot of those folks may have voted for her. That may have put her over the top.
Very hard to know.
Yeah,
because all of the undecideds and all of the people waiting to see how things played out. Basically, all of them went to Crowley. Like every last one of them went to Crowley. It's really remarkable. You never see that where every undecided breaks for one candidate. Like,
I think it was just the timing, and some of those tweets came out. Yeah,
it's hard for me to believe that a couple of tweets moved. Well, the narrative did, and the media just they don't care about issues. We know this. I'm
doesn't sell papers.
I'm preaching to the choir, but man, they do not care about issues. But I also, before we get into other news, to stay with the primaries, next week, another Tuesday, another round of primaries, and this time we've got. Well, Wyoming, which that's just GOP infighting. I don't care.
Is Alaska on the 18th?
Yeah. Alaska is next week. So the reason Alaska is interesting is because they have a jungle primary where 4 people will get through. Now, that wouldn't be very interesting because there's the current senator, Dan Sullivan, and then there's the Democratic challenger, Mary Peltola, who are expected to breeze through this thing. The thing is, and what makes this a little interesting and a little funny, is there's another guy named Dan Sullivan on the ballot, and he is not a senator. He's a teacher. And the GOP tried
Democrat,
to sue.
Running against a Republican who's named Dan Sullivan. And they challenge it in court, and he's allowed to stay on the ballot.
Well, he wanted to have a Republican on his ballot line. And that was the compromise. The Republicans were trying to get a judge to throw his name off the ballot, but he had gotten on the ballot through officially, done properly. So the compromise that the judge gave them was that he couldn't put Republican next to his name, but that's what he wanted to do.
Did he put Democrat, or did he just leave it blank?
I think
or
there's nothing
independent?
there.
Okay.
I think there's nothing there.
Well, it's going to confuse a lot of folks.
I think that
Both
was
ways,
this guy's.
both ways, maybe.
This was that guy's idea. Well, no Democrats are going to vote for a guy named Dan Sullivan in Alaska. And here's something about that race. You'd think, oh, it's Alaska. Republicans will just win. Well, not so fast. I mean, most prognosticators, and here's the caveat. I've been complaining about the polling, but that's been these primaries, which are ridiculously hard to poll. Let's be fair. The general pollsters are way more accurate in the general. And they're showing we've got people predicting toss-up or even Lean Peltola, the Democrat in Alaska. She did win before statewide because they have an at-large House seat, and she did win that race and then lost re-election for that. So this would not be the first time, if she were to upset Dan Sullivan, this would not be the first time that she's won a statewide race in Alaska. So
I think my prediction is she will win, and there'll be a big turnout. She was popular, she's likable. She worked hard.
She's got a connection, I believe, to the Native community there. She's about protecting the waters and fishing and all that kind of stuff, which, these are things that are important in Alaska. It's a beautiful place with, lots of fishing is a huge industry there. And so it's, she has a lot of connection to a lot of people there. And like I said, she's won statewide before. So I think Nate Silver has it leaning Democrat, if I remember right. I saw a tweet.
I mean, I'm not surprised at that. I know you were disappointed with the polling, but the Kelsey prediction market was actually pretty accurate on these primaries. So that's interesting. We'll have to check that more.
Well, no, I just saw a report where Kelsey's basically followed the polling.
Oh, really?
Kelsey was no more correct than the polling.
We'll have to talk about that next week when I dig into the data.
I think because all it is people just betting good money after bad based on what they're learning from conventional wisdom and from polling. So Kelsey,
I don't know, but it serves an interest. We want to know what people perceive, because some of them
But this is what
have
degenerate gamblers perceive.
Not really. There's other
really.
people that may bet $1, whatever. They're not betting a lot of money. They just want to make a prediction.
There's a barrier to just putting money into these things and actually using them.
Yeah.
And the type of people that go through the steps to get to that point. I mean, and the other thing is there's a lot of cheating in a lot of these prediction markets.
It would be better if we had prediction markets where there was no money. People were just putting out what they think, because then you have a bigger sample. And there's no money exchange. That's a great way to understand. Mm-hmm.
But just to give you an example.
We should do that, Sam. We should put that on our YouTube. People's
there's a thing. I'm a really good app developer, but
you don't need to. There's AI, Sam. There's AI.
Oh no. Every AI program get into that. But no, AI programs that supposedly create apps for you are all complete failures. But anyways, I mean, it's just AI. Read the book. Everybody read Cory Doctorow. Just read Cory. Read what by Cory Doctorow? Read everything by Cory Doctorow. It's or read. Go on to the blog. Where's Your Ed at by Ed Zitron. Read that. But anyways, sorry. That was Alaska. Florida, Jen. So we have two really compelling Democratic primaries in Florida. So Florida redrew its districts, a few months ago, recently, in this kind of mad dash that Craig was complaining about yesterday of all these states redistricting midstream. Anyways, Florida was one of them. And so Florida drew new districts, and longtime conservative Democrat Debbie Wasserman Schultz, her district got rearranged to make it kind of toss-up. And she didn't want to run in a toss-up district. So she changed districts and is now running a primary in a Black majority district, and local leaders are really pissed off because
the Black Caucus is really upset. Yeah.
Yep. And so she's in a primary against kind of a standard two black politicians, one who's kind of a standard Democrat, former mayor. His name is Dale Holness. But then the other guy that, has a little bit more national attention because he's young and DSA aligned and very energetic is Elijah Manley. I don't necessarily know where things stand because if statewide polling is going to be wrong, God, Lord knows about.
I bet you the biggest issue that's going to decide that race is Israel and AIPAC money.
It could be.
My guess is that Wasserman Schultz, I'm guessing this, but she probably supports and has in the past Israel.
If this were a race straight up between her and Elijah Manley, I would say you're absolutely right. I don't know what having a third reasonably strong candidate in this race does. I don't know if Elijah Manley and Dale Holness split, allowing Debbie Wasserman Schultz to get through. I have no idea. We will find out.
She probably has more. She's probably better funded, has more money, tons of money, and name recognition and connections. So let's see. She was
really high up in leadership once upon a time. She hasn't been lately, but yeah, she was a much bigger name 10 years ago. Like during the Obama years, she was a much bigger name. But she's still a big name in Florida politics. Everybody knows her in Florida politics. Yep. And then we have Florida's 25th district. And this is the one that I've been having my eye on for quite some time because you have one of the most conservative Democrats in the country, Jared Moskowitz, really heavily AIPAC guy and all that stuff. And he's got this another young guy, Oliver Larkin, DSA endorsed. He's kind of made a name for himself by always wearing a suit no matter the situation. Like he'll be outside in that Florida heat in the middle of the summer in a full suit and tie, the whole 9 yards. It's
like our own Zach Flipovich.
There you go. Well, he kind of has that background. He had political parents and was involved in door knocking and politics since he was like 16 or whatever. So he has, I guess there'd be some similarities with Zach there in that way. He's, I think he worked for Bernie Sanders back in the day. So he's been involved at in national politics, but he's, obviously a super underfunded campaign, but in the polling we have, and again, polling in these, this is the only information anyone can actually go on. So we'll still use it, even though I don't trust a bit of it. But it's shown he's gotten it to almost a dead heat. I mean, he's super underdog. But Jared Moskowitz, just so people know, this guy refers to himself proudly as being a Ron DeSantis Democrat. But Ron DeSantis is the deeply conservative governor of Florida who opened, Alligator Alcatraz. And,
my guess is he will win. The incumbent will win.
Oh, it probably. But listen, this is the year of upsets. We've had, once you include John Larson in Connecticut, that's between Democrats and Republicans, 10 incumbents have been knocked off in the House. 10. I think that's a record. I might be wrong, but in the primaries.
People are looking for younger individuals to represent them and to get rid of people who've been there forever and haven't done much. That's what people want.
Yeah. And another highlight of Moskowitz, I saw an interview he did, and he was asked what his advice to young people is. And he said, avoid politics. He said, avoid politics. You should go into venture capitalism.
You don't just go into venture capitalism. You either have to have inherited a lot of money or made a lot of money. Then you become a venture capitalist.
This just shows you
we don't have a major venture capitalist, although we do have entrepreneurship. I mean, actually, there might be one program.
This is how out of touch this guy is. He is not operating at the same wavelength as his voters. And
How old is he?
He's not that old.
Okay.
He's probably in his late 40s, early 50s.
Okay, he probably will win, but let's find. When is that primary?
This is all Tuesday. This is all coming up Tuesday. So Alaska, Florida, Wyoming. there are GOP races that are like the one in Wyoming has gotten really ugly among the GOP. One of the
Data
guys
centers,
running,
right? Yeah.
no,
Oh, that's not
one of the
data
guys
center
running
guy?
is, well, maybe, but one of the guys running is gay. And the other candidates are robocalling, say, this guy is a gay husband. Like, just nasty stuff.
God, I hope that backfires, man.
Well, we'll see. I mean, who knows if that guy is any like great shakes politically anyways,
It's
gay or not.
Republicans. They're still doing the culture stuff. And even today, J.D. Vance announced, because he's on, he's chairing this task force on fraud.
Yeah.
He's going after hospitals that provide gender-affirming care to children, to younger people, teenagers, etc. They're going to go after them.
They think that that's what won. I mean, I think every side of the political equation is confused about why Trump actually won that race. I mean, a lot of people think it was that ad. She's for they, them.
Yep.
He's for the rest of us. I think people, yeah, it was an anti-trans ad, but I think the message that hit harder was she's for them, as in the elite, the snobs, the rich people. I think people didn't read it necessarily as
maybe
anti-trans, but I think it was more like the Democrats
for the wealthy, elite.
Yeah, the Democrats are no longer the party of the working class.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how I think it went down.
They may have perceived it that way.
Wouldn't it be nice if someone had paid for a report that dug into these questions and actually got good answers? I think someone promised to do that at some point. I'm going to be sour about that
Well, remember, Republicans don't have anything else to run on, so they're going to run on the culture issues. And now you see Trump calling everyone a communist and jihadist. This is what's going to be effective. And apparently, public radio did a focus group of Republicans that voted for Trump in the last election. And this focus group, basically, they didn't have a negative connotation of socialism. They were equating socialism to programs that they benefit from, that people need. But so this is why Trump is using the word communist instead of socialist now. So,
but I still, like I've said many times, once you're under the age of 50 right now, even that word has way less negative connotations than it used to.
Hopefully you're right.
Over the age of 50, it still does, I think. It just, when were you born and when did the Berlin Wall fall is really the main determinant as to how scared you are of those words. And there's a lot of...
Let's have a really young person on, younger than us, and find out. Let's ask them about question. Someone in their late 20s, mid 20s.
Quiz them about Soviet history.
No, quiz them about what they perceive communism. No, I just want to know what their perceptions of communism. What did they associate with that word?
And they also, they try to use Marxism, but, most people don't know anything about Karl Marx, who he is, all that kind of stuff. And then,
we used to teach, in college, the students used to be required in a lot of econ programs to take the history of economic thought, where they would learn about Karl Marx. And then that we don't even offer that class anymore.
Then it depends on the professor, right?
No, you would be covering. I would think you'd be covering Marx.
No, not whether or not they cover it, but the valence over which. Because some people just obviously there are plenty of economists that are completely pejorative. Because really, what Marx didn't invent communism. Really, he critiqued capitalism. That's
right.
Das Kapital is 2,500 pages of what is capitalism and how does it work, and 2,500 pages of that. And he does not here's my description of a communist utopia. I mean, the Communist Manifesto is extremely short. You can literally read it in one sitting. And as a co-author, the guy that, Marx was the brain, and then this other guy, this British guy, was the money. And Frederick Engels basically paid for
poor and poverty. Yeah.
Well, he had a benefactor in Engels, but anyways, yeah. So, and actually, the Communist Manifesto, Jen, when we talk about school, the university I started, I didn't graduate from it. but it's where I started. I did transfer. Every single freshman that went there, this is Lawrence University in Appleton, they have a freshman studies program where every single freshman takes the same course from a bunch of different professors. So you have small classes, but everyone has the same reading assignments. And, you know, it's not all reading. You know, there was an assignment to study like a jazz album by Miles Davis, I think, my year. And these things change. And there was a classical music one, and there was, you know, fiction, and there was nonfiction. Well, the Communist Manifesto was one of them. And I hear that that's kind of one they always insist that the students read. They always have the Communist Manifesto on there because kids grow up, at least they used to. I don't know if they still do, but kids grow up when I was young learning, ooh, scary. And so universities wanted to kind of shock you right off the bat by saying,
you
is it
should
really
see
that scary?
if that's still in the syllabus. I know when I was a professor at Cornell, we would make all the freshmen, incoming freshmen, read the same exact book. And so we would all have something common to talk about in our classes.
That makes perfect sense.
It was a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was exposed to a range of different things that, I found that a very valuable experience. And I think a lot of people did. I was lucky I got a professor who taught with the Socratic method during that time. So that was especially, we really had to use our noggins because he'd just call on you out of the blue.
We need to go back to that in college because of AI, all big time. I just saw that University of Michigan is gonna hide freshmen's first semester grades. They're just gonna have a pass fail on their transcript. Because they're worried about their mental health or how it impacts them, or they're not ready for college.
Yeah, I gotta say, my nephew's in high school, and there's just like, oh my God, are they concerned about the letter grades? Jeez Louise.
Well, there's been grade inflation. I mean, Harvard had to pass a policy that not everybody could get an A or an A plus in the class. I mean, it's huge grade inflation in colleges. And now it's worse with AI. They can, any assignment they can get a perfect grade on because AI is doing it for them.
I mean, when I was in high school, you kind of had to sort of worry about grades from time to time, but it was not this huge focus. And now it's like, they don't even learn how to take notes, but they are very, very worried about grades. Like they genuinely don't know how
they don't take notes. They don't take notes.
Well, and nobody's teaching them.
Let's move on. Anything else about politics?
No, no. As far as next week,
I just want to say I saw Peggy Flanagan mention that she wants to serve on the Senate Help Committee, which deals with health, education, labor, and pensions. And so I'm super excited that she wants to, work on healthcare. So, man, be great to work with her
education, labor,
that.
and pensions.
And
that's
all
like
of those things, but
that's
health.
the meat. That's the meat of the progressive assignment. That's like
she
everything.
knows that's where Minnesota's getting hurt by the Trump administration on all the programs that go through that committee. That committee has oversight of. That
would be a lower level committee, not one of the top
There's a help
level
subcommittee, but hopefully she'll be on the larger committee too if she's on the subcommittees. So, I mean, it's a powerful committee. I believe Senator Al Franken was on that committee and Wellstone. So we have a history. And then I think she also noted she wants to be on the Ag committee, which makes sense.
I think she's going to do a good job running against Michelle Tafoya.
A lot of money is going to be spent in this race. So, yeah, if there's a big turnout, she will do. I predict that the many will beat the money again. So,
yeah, I also think they're going to be playing defense in a lot of races. There may be less money coming to Minnesota than you would otherwise think, just because they've got so many close.
I know. Why would they waste their money? A Republican hasn't won statewide, but this is their shot. So maybe.
Well, the Republicans look at Minnesota like Democrats look at Texas. That's why I've been so skeptical of Texas. Now, even Nate Silver, who historically has been very, he leans against upsets, and he usually rides the conventional, history. He hasn't been rosy about Texas for Democrats ever. Even, Beto O'Rourke, when people thought they had a legit chance. But even he is saying Texas is a lean Democrat now. He moved it into the blue column. which, he's not the end all be all of prognosticators, but he's definitely
But if
one of
he's
the
doing
top
that,
guys.
money will follow that prediction, possibly.
So
we'll see.
I worry about Democrats getting their hopes up for Texas, but all of
you
the
gotta
signals.
have hope, Sam. Gotta have hope.
Yeah.
If there's a blue wave, it's possible.
Yeah.
But they gotta start chipping away at that gap.
Gotta have hope. I don't gotta have hope about Texas up here. The ones who actually are doing the work down in Texas.
Yeah. I think Craig was a little bit optimistic about picking up some of the southern states.
My goodness.
So that's good because he's level-headed.
And he said he's been a fan of Tallarico for a long time.
Yeah, he knows he's seen a lot.
Yeah. Well, he also Craig follows some very down ballot stuff all over the country.
Yeah. Oh,
so the fact that he knows about Tallarico from back in the day, that he follows these things. So
and because we have a lot of Minnesota people, I'm hopefully listening. There are two state legislative races. One was the Minnesota Senate race in the 5th Senate district. And that's Senator Paul Utke got defeated. He's the incumbent. He's been there for a long time, was defeated by Weiner. And I don't know if he was more right of Utke. I don't know the details, but we might want to dig into that. And then Ron Latz, also a senator, had a strong challenger, but he was successful. So he won.
Jen, Utke's name came up. I don't know if I was talking to you. I think I was talking to somebody else, but Utke's name came up recently with me. So it's interesting to hear his name come up again. So he's out.
He's out. I worked very closely with Paul Utke.
So he was
he might have been too moderate for them.
So he's north of the Twin Cities, like Isanti and
rural,
Cambridge and stuff. Yeah.
Northern Minnesota. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now we're getting into it. People want to know about Isanti and Cambridge and stuff, right?
Okay.
We're just south of there. But anyway, that's yeah.
They actually reported it wrong initially. This is why I didn't see it probably, but they reported Utke as the winner. They had to fix it. The county did.
Really?
The Secretary of State, they had to go back and fix it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
No, I thought the Minnesota returns, well, like I said yesterday, I mean, Dakota County only going to Angie by 54 votes was like, oh my goodness. And then you said that a lot of the legislators there backed
Peggy Flanagan.
What Angie was trying to run on was the legislators in the most contested districts backed her. That was her argument. In other words, the most centrist and the most, scared of Republican people supported me. But no, the dynamics are so different. I mean, we talked a lot yesterday.
Angie's district now is probably a safe Dem district because she won by 5, 6, 7 points the last time. So Matt Little
changed because tons of people keep moving out of the downtown areas.
Right. But Matt Little ran on Medicare for all. So Public Radio interviewed his Republican opponent, Eric Pratt, and they asked Eric Pratt, what do you want to do on health care? People can't afford their health care anymore. What are you going to do? He goes, well, I'm going to put some thought into that. Like, oh my God, you've been a state senator. You should know what you could do in Congress to help fix health care. I'm like, come on. So I think Matt Little's going to, and the other good thing about being a safe Dem seat and Matt Little being a great campaigner is that Dems won't have to put so much money in to retain this seat like they have in the past, $40 million. That money can go to other races.
And I will contend that a positive, here's what I'm going to get done message, which Angie Craig never really ran that way. She ran on bipartisanship and kumbaya, and I'm going to get along with Republicans. But Matt Little's going to run on, here's what I'm going to do for you. And I just think that contra the conventional wisdom, I personally believe that is more electable, but it's never really been tested properly on the national stage. I was hoping we would get that test in Wisconsin. We will not, but we are going to get that test in Michigan. Now, I think based on something Craig said that he leans a little more towards the more conventional thinking in that way, because he said he's worried about Michigan. I would have been more worried if Haley Stevens had gotten the nod.
Well, they unveiled a bunch of tweets or podcasts episodes from Abdul al-Sayed. And he's, made some comments that may not be popular, may be taken out of context. And, and they're doing their ops research now, and all of this stuff is going to come out. I'm glad it's coming out now. It's better to come out early, and he can.
But a lot of it
talk
had
about
already, a lot of it had already come out. And, Haley Stevens, said, I'm going to get behind you, support you, all that good stuff. She said all the right things. But then yesterday she was on news station doing an interview, and she started attacking him for campaigning with Hassan Piker again. It's like, lady, you lost to the guy who already did campaign with him, Hassan Piker. Get over it.
Oh my God, you can't attack a candidate just because they are friends with him, or he helps bring people to the campaign. I mean, come on.
Like, he's doing, as far as candidates he's endorsed and actively campaigned for, they're doing really well.
But Hassan Piker said some things that people may not agree with, and he's walked some things back. But you don't put that's not a mark against Abdul El-Sayed. He didn't say those things. Hassan Piker said those things. There's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference. But unfortunately, we've let, I think a lot of it has to do with Islamophobia. I think we've let it go so much, kind of as a population, that one guy's named Abdul, the other guy's named Hassan. How scary. I saw an interview, by the way, speaking of the name Abdul, that, his full first name is Abdul Rahman.
Mm-hmm.
And, people couldn't pronounce that generally when he was a kid. So they decided, because Paula Abdul was a really big name when he was a kid, that people could handle the name Abdul. So that's why they just shortened it to Abdul. I was like, that's funny, because Paula Abdul, you don't think of her as some scary Muslim person or anything like that. So
before we break today, we've got to mention this article that was in the Star Tribune, Minnesota Star Tribune, and the New York Times.
Okay.
And this is, they got information from the federal government and the United States Homeland Security. This was right after ICE agents killed Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. And Homeland Security immediately opened an investigation into many organizations and groups in Minnesota. And they were trying to investigate if these groups were the instigators, the ones that were on the street protesting. And so they infiltrated labor unions, climate change groups, socialist collective groups, because they thought that they were giving money and support and instigating or agitating folks on the street. So this is the stuff, this investigation. I mean, they sent people to undercover to get in these groups, and they requested information on funding going back 3 years, way before they, used a subpoena to get financial records of these groups. One is the Sunrise Movement. I think this is the same group that Lawrence.
William Lawrence, was a co-founder. Yep.
Co-founder of that group.
Mm-hmm.
SEIU, big union in Minnesota and nationally. Communications Workers of America. So they got 3 years of financial data. They got 3 years of wire transfers from the SEIU union. And because they were inquiring about domestic terrorist financing. I mean, this is absurd that this is happening in the U.S. This goes back to the stuff that happened. I wasn't alive, but the Hoover administration with the FBI. And this is Homeland Security. This isn't the FBI, but of course, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota was helping them, Homeland Security, acquire this information. But none of these groups faced any charges. None of them were charged.
You're right. This absolutely resonates with, the Black Panther stuff and the assassinations that the FBI carried out back then. Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean,
and it's so dangerous because back then the FBI actively killed people.
Yeah, well, dangerous. These are people who are just using their First Amendment rights to protect their neighbors, to go out and protest. They're not doing anything illegal. What I think surprised the Trump administration and ICE agents is the number of people that just came out. They couldn't believe that it wasn't organized by some group.
Well, Trump couldn't.
This is scary. Yeah. This is scary, and I'm worried what's going to happen in this coming up November election and the 2028 election, because they have National Guard and they're putting more on the streets of D.C. And I'm worried that just having military personnel in cities on a day that people vote may deter people from voting. So I am just worried that this is going to escalate. They're going to put more military on the streets to scare people.
Organizers, well, I know that a lot of organizers and get out the vote people are obviously aware of these things, and a lot of these groups are emphasizing early voting. A lot of these groups are creating plans and helping local communities create plans. States like Minnesota are being active and making sure that local poll workers and volunteers and all that stuff know what the hell's going on. So obviously, we're all right to be worried. I mean, the Trump interview yesterday where he said, "Yeah, I'll think about that," when he was asked about declaring a state of emergency over elections. It's not an idle threat. It's scary. And fortunately, there's a lot of people working on this. And educate, it's on all of us also. It shouldn't have to be, but it's on all of us to educate ourselves about what our options are, what our abilities are as far as voting early, as far as where our polling places are, and who to call if there's a problem. Those are things we all need to know. And that's information that we need to get out there. So we'll keep an eye out for websites and groups that have kind of like have this information, and we'll as time goes on and we get closer to November, we'll share as much of that kind of information as we can
But the other thing that's very concerning is that their ICE agents, Border Patrol, are arresting people with green cards, and they're sending them to detention centers. And these folks don't have representation from a lawyer or attorney. And people don't know about this. These stories are not getting out. There was a professor, I think in California, her husband was arrested. And then the next day, they arrested her and her teenage son. And they were sent to a detention center, and they're still there. And they all have green cards. So this is absurd. This is happening. This is like one story we know of. And we just cannot allow people to be arrested this way and sent to these detention centers in deplorable conditions.
And so there was an argument that I was having, or I should say that I was overseeing, maybe is a better word. So a couple of friends of mine back in California, one of whom is more politically aligned where I am at, was talking to another friend of ours who's kind of politically ambivalent. And my friend was my more politically aligned friend, I guess you'd say. He was speaking in terms before Trump got elected. So this was before the election. He was saying, if Trump wins, you're going to see actual, people, citizens and green card holders and legal residents deported. You're going to see them arrested. You're going to see them harassed. You're going to see them deported. And my politically ambivalent friend, texted me, is like, dude, it's crazy. There's no way. I'm like, I think there is a way. I think you should not dismiss this. And it didn't take long after Trump took office for that to happen, but now it's happening on a daily basis. They're rounding up people left and right, many of them here legally with full documentation, but illegal. It's not a criminal offense unless you've already been, unless you've overstayed and you've been warned and all that stuff, then it rises. But just overstaying a visa or just being here without documentation it's not it's not a felony, it's not a criminal offense. It's a civil offense. It's a fine.
The folks that are being sent to these detention centers, Sam, they did nothing illegal. They're here legally.
Yeah, most
with the
of them have
cards.
done nothing criminal. But
this is what's scary, and this is why we have to dissent. And
yes,
we'll
but
even
even
if
if they're
talk
not
about this and talk about real people being sent to these detention centers or being deported.
Right, but even if they don't have the proper paperwork, that's a civil offense, not a criminal one. The promise that people like my apolitical friend, I guess you'd call him apolitical, whatever. But the problem is that they took Trump at his word. Never mind the fact that they had mass deportations now on signs at their rallies. Never mind that. They took him at his word that they were only going after the bad guy. In other words, the actual criminals.
The worst of the worst is what they
said.
said.
People who've committed crimes and in addition are here without proper documentation. Both. That's what they assumed that's what. I know plenty of people who are first generation immigrants who believed that.
Well,
and bought into it.
They can't believe that anymore, but that's why his popularity is like only 33%. He's just lying about everything, and he can't help himself. And that
may be why Texas is actually in play.
Okay, what's up for next week, Sam?
Next week, for sure, we'll be covering Florida, and we hope to have another historian on to talk about the Upper Midwest and its history. It's just a fascinating topic. People overlook that. People call this flyover country, Jen, but Minnesota and Wisconsin have and North Dakota. I want to throw North Dakota.
People know where Minneapolis is now, given the George Floyd
that's true.
And Black Lives Matter and the Operation Metro Surge.
But historically, North Dakota.
More songs are being written about Minneapolis. I think people can find us on a map now.
Yes. But historically, North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin have absolutely fascinating political histories.
Yes.
And Craig got into it a little bit. We're hoping to have another historian come on to talk specifically about those three states and the very, very, very leftist political history of these three states, and the farmers and the workers and the cooperatives, the cooperative groups that made the landscape up here what it is and have shaped politics. Even in deep red North Dakota, there's still prairie socialism. There's still that still exists in some form there. So we'll learn more about that hopefully next week, if not then the following week. But obviously more politics, and then whatever the hell else happens. Hopefully not too much. It's been too much of a fire hose of stuff, but we'll see. But all that and more next week. But for now, on behalf of Jen Schultz, I'm Sam Martin, and this has been Our Dissent. And joining us now is JP Gresh, who is a recently retired colonel with the United States Army, spent his Army career strengthening U.S. security via allies and partners, representing the country in some of the toughest spots, Ukraine, Russia, and the Middle East. He is a non-resident fellow with the Center for Strategic and International Studies and currently serves on the board of Duluth Sister Cities. Welcome back, JP.
Good to be here, Sam. Thanks for having me.
So we spoke about a little over a month ago about Ukraine and Russia, and obviously more things have happened there, and just an endless amount of news coming out of the Middle East. And just yesterday, to kind of set the scene, Trump put out a tweet on his social media platform where he said, quote, "The USA has total control over the Strait of Hormuz. I think we will keep it." And he goes on to disparage the Iranian government, ending with praise be to Allah, which he's gotten into doing lately. So as Americans see their gas prices go up and farmers see fertilizer prices go up, and prices of everything are related to gas and fertilizer for people at the everyday level, it's important, really important, to have a clear sense of what's going on in the Middle East. And a tweet like that certainly doesn't give us a clear sense. So why don't we start by kind of setting the scene a little bit as far as what, in your understanding, is going on right now with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, sure thing. I think, in short, what we're facing right now is just a limited capacity of the United States to meet its objectives, whatever those are at the moment, concerning Iran. We've seen reports, for example, of just diminished stockpiles of weapons, and the U.S. this is important for the United States because the U.S. has relied on long-range strikes to enact or try to achieve some of its war aims in Iran. So looking at that, I think President Trump is probably very interested also in maintaining a sense of calm or stability in advance of the midterm elections, and doesn't want to do anything to jeopardize the party's chances in the upcoming midterms, and try to enact some sort of damage control going into the midterms. And so I think when you see, at least from my personal opinion, a tweet like that, he's speaking to the American public and no one else. But of course, if you look into it, we know that the Strait of Hormuz is contested, that Iran has the ability to reach out and strike vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. And it's very much a contested water space at the moment. So we have two sort of immovable forces. Iran seems to be having, or I would say probably does have, more leverage, knowing the diminished stockpiles of U.S. weapons in the inventory, and can then subsequently increase the rhetoric and the threats and the demands on the United States as a result. And so now we're here, and hopefully we have some way of, at least getting back to normal, which is unfettered access and international norms of water, of maritime traffic traveling through the Strait of Hormuz.
Right. Well, that you mentioned the U.S. military goals, whatever they are. I mean, that's a very good point. what I mean, it seems to be very unclear, not just to the American people, but to the American officials who go out and speak at podiums. What are U.S. military goals with respect to Iran? One day it's they must never have nuclear weapons. One day it's they must open the Strait of Hormuz. Another, it's that they need to stop being bullies, to quote the president. They need to stop being bullies in the greater Middle East. I understand that those are goals that he says he may have, but those were goals that before this war began seemed largely to have already existed. I mean, Iran had not built a nuclear weapon as far as we knew. And when we were in the JCPOA, which was signed during the Obama administration, they provably were not doing it because inspectors were allowed into the country. Before this war began, the strait was completely open to all traffic with no fees or anything. And, Iran had its kind of, Iran, like any large power in any region, has its influence throughout the region, like anywhere else in the world, whether you want to call it being a bully or not. I mean, other parts of the Middle East can be accused of being bullies as well. How are those military goals? I mean, what militarily can be? Well, it seems the military action has made all of those things worse.
Well, yeah, I would just clarify that I think, as much as this situation represents a mess for the United States, that we've been in similar situations before, unfortunately. And history is abundant with examples of other interventions that have not gone our way, regardless of administration enacting it. So there are, I think it is a fair criticism to question the goals of this operation, but I would phrase them as, what were the political goals of this war? And obviously, I don't want to speak for the administration. I do not. And you would have to ask, and that people are asking the administration, what are the political goals of this war? And they've given various answers over time, as you have cited. But the military is there, of course, to enact through military resources and operations, personnel and tactics, weaponry to enact those political goals through some sort of means on the battlefield. Goals though do change over time, and like we say sometimes in the military, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, and so things change. Their initial, the administration's initial goal, if we were to take them at their word as regime change, obviously didn't succeed, and just from my opinion, not really informed by history of air campaigns in history that have tended to embolden those bombed and not defeat them. You can look at the Blitz in Britain. You can look at operations right now in Ukraine. The only time, sadly, a bombing campaign that I can think of, and the obvious example that we can all think of, is when we dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan to avoid a ground invasion of Japan and prevent many more casualties. But I digress. These goals change, and now we see a situation where the administration is trying to force with the circumstances on the ground, and the situation right now is they very much, I think, want to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, restore some sense of normalcy there, or at least, at the very least, uphold the terms of the ceasefire that were ostensibly agreed to in April between Iran and the administration.
Right. And then beyond that, there was the memorandum of understanding in June, which seemed to be immediately violated. I mean, I don't think either side is blameless here, but it seems that this started off with a negotiation occurring and a strike against Iran happening while negotiations were apparently underway. So negotiating under false pretenses, as it were. And on day one of the strike, just to remind everybody, the joint operation between the U.S. and Israel managed to assassinate the leader of Iran in the very first day of the strike, as well as hit an all-girls school twice, maybe even 3 times.
Tragically.
This is, I think, the first time. We had an interview with a political historian yesterday, and in his recollection, this is the first time U.S. has gotten into a war with this level of unpopularity among the U.S. public. In terms of, obviously, public sentiment has turned against wars in the past, but they're usually not against it from day one. So the military obviously is subservient to the politicians. The politicians have something they want the military to do. It's the military's job to execute it. But it seems that in this and many other circumstances, it appears like it's not the right tool for the job. I mean, the strait is, well, it's not completely closed. There's a small amount of traffic that's getting through, presumably because Iran is okay with that traffic getting through.
Yeah. No, I just think it's a complete. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask what do we do? It's like,
no, that's a great question. I think it's a breakdown in statecraft in terms of what there's a whole national security statecraft in foreign policy, and when I say statecraft, the ability to meet both domestic and foreign policy goals for our country and to uphold our values or interests where they may lay. So I personally agree that the military was probably not the best means of achieving that goal, if it was regime change or if it was elimination of nuclear capacity inside Iran. And we had other mechanisms in the past, like JCPOA, of course, to mitigate or contain that threat. They chose to not do that, unfortunately, and that's where experience and expertise and leadership matters in this administration, or the lack of it shows what we can get ourselves into. Now, I know there's very smart people at the Pentagon, having worked there. I'm not saying that just because I work there, but I know there are very competent, I would say, people in uniform advising on these plans day in, day out. But as long as those orders, as you referred to, are not illegal or violate some sort of a law of war, there's sometimes very little that the military can do to stop those plans once they become in motion. And we've seen this throughout history, whether it be in Vietnam or the recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, so unfortunately, we have notable instances of where that broke down. We also have notable instances where it succeeded, right? So sometimes the bad examples are more memorable. But yeah, you see the administration now coming around to your point, like having more language and rhetoric on the subject of sanctions and economic blockade. And even when the administration enacted a blockade of Iranian ports, or at least a portion of the Iranian coastline, many, including myself, are left wondering, why didn't we do this from the outset? Instead of, spending all that money and causing all that damage at the outset of the war. So, but this administration, as we've seen, is prone to use military force, and other administrations before it have been prone to use military force and resorted to. We always like to say, military force should be the tool of last resort, but not everyone believes it. And we've seen a more outspoken and at times jingoistic language coming from this administration, probably overestimating our capabilities, our military capabilities.
Well, and that's a really, let's break down that point a little bit, because I think this gets to what the future may portend, which is, up until this war, the United States appeared to be recognized. I mean, obviously, 50, 60 years ago, Mao Zedong called the United States a paper tiger in terms of what force it wanted to project versus what force it could project. And for the most part, nobody's believed that statement from Mao. And everybody assumed that if the United States wanted to project its military force anywhere in the world, it could, to a devastating degree, and change the nature of what's going on in the favor of the United States. Well, this conflict appears to have shown the paper tigerness, as it were, of military force projection. We're not capable of extracting, it seems, anything. Iran holds all the cards. I mean, John Mearsheimer, who's, he does not have a history of being a pinko lefty or anything like that. He's not a peacenik, this guy, but he is a realist, and he's been studying this stuff for forever. And he says the U.S. has simply lost this war. I mean, he uses very clear language. And what it looks like now is that we don't have that. Like, the rest of the world is looking at the United States like Mao did 60 years ago. And is that fair? Is that an incorrect assumption? What, like, based on the reporting that come out about, as you said, being low on missiles and low on interceptors and all those kind of things, is that the new reality moving forward?
I don't know if it's a new reality moving forward. I think, we just have a history from one administration to another that looks a little bit differently on interventionism. And ever since the close of World War II and the establishment of this so-called rules-based international order that we're wading through and questioning in recent years, we being the world. Ever since then, we are now in a situation where I think we're just strained to meet our ambitions abroad, and so with the war in Iran, I wouldn't disagree that we've lost it. I would say that we are very much on a back foot on this one, but it's also just not all doom and gloom either. I don't subscribe to the fact that we're a paper tiger. I think we have overestimated just our ability and underestimate our ability to force project in this part of the world, and underestimated Iran's capacity for resilience and to keep going. We have, by some reports, destroyed around 75 or 80% of their ballistic missile capability and wiped out large portions of their Navy, and if not the entire Navy and Air Force. So it's not a complete, I should say, it's not completely, loss for us to have that, sort of mowing the lawn and put it into Israeli parlance is basically what we've done. And that's how they have characterized their strategy vis-a-vis Iran or Hezbollah on their border for many years. It's just mowing the lawn. And I think that's basically what we've done here in this instance with Iran.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, that is a very ugly term there. I mean, it's a euphemism for devastating military action that kills a lot of people.
It did, yeah. And it's not pretty, and I don't endorse it. It's just I say that just as an objective sort of observation,
right,
of what has happened, and the calculus, I would say, for making these decisions, and I have not been, at the White House or, at the National Security Council, but I've known folks who have worked there. Sometimes, the calculus for entering these wars can be very fickle and very emotional and very unpredictable. So it's not as logical sometimes as we would like it to be.
Right. So, I mean, you mentioned, okay, yes, we've shown that we don't have the kind of power that we would want in the Middle East, but our reach as a country, as an empire, if you will, is global, and everything that happens in any one region affects things that happen everywhere else around the globe. And so when we talk about being low, especially on these, ballistic missile interceptors that were used heavily a year ago in the 12-day war, when Iran launched its older missiles into Israel, sure, a lot of those interceptors were used. And what we found out is we're basically running out. And ones we had in, say, Korea, other in the area of Taiwan, may have even been moved into the Middle East. So there's less protection over there. And and how many we have left is, we don't necessarily know exactly, but there is reporting requirements to Congress, and we do know that the numbers are very, very low, and it takes a long time to build those kind of things. And while, yes, the missiles that we can shoot that go a long way that we had been using in Iran, not interceptors, but these other long-range missiles, those are running low as well, which means the only other option is to send U.S. flyers over the country and there's already been planes shot down. So obviously, fortunately, I would say the administration is hesitant to send U.S. flyers over Iran and put themselves in danger of, surface to air missiles and stuff like that. But it, like, we don't want to use U.S. personnel, which is good. I'm glad. I endorse that. We don't want to actually send people into Iran. There's been a lot of threats. Oh, we're going to take Karg Island, all these kind of things. But he doesn't seem to want to do that. And I'm grateful for that. But if we don't have any more long-range missiles, or if we do, we don't want to use them anymore, and we don't want to send actual airmen over that country, I mean, what could possibly be next militarily, aside from short of just leaving? What could possibly come next?
Well, I mean, I think it comes back to our earlier discussion. What is the objective now? What should be the political objective? Is it to restore international shipping in the Strait of Hormuz? And if that is the objective, then all the diplomatic, economic, military resources should be devoted to that objective. And that doesn't mean bombing, and I'm not accusing the military of doing this, but, bombing other targets that are unrelated to that objective. You should selectively target that which opens up or makes that objective possible. And then there are war plans, I'm confident, that could do that to make that objective possible. But I think what we're seeing here also is something that other countries have faced a dilemma with, in terms of being able to achieve your goals through military force alone, and especially through indirect military force, through air power, and when I say indirect, I mean lobbing missiles, artillery shells, drones, aircraft dropping bombs, firing missiles, indirect action, as opposed to direct action, which really is fighting on the ground, advancing, defeating your enemy on the ground to take territory. For a lot of reasons, we and others are, I think, in my opinion only, are drawn in by the allure of indirect action for some of the reasons that you have already mentioned: to avoid human casualties, to give the appearance of destruction without perhaps a decisive result, to show a propaganda effort of defeating your enemy, to show that you're winning in the information space, to show your domestic population it's okay, and I would posit also to sort of not by not using actual troops, you're shielding, I think, the American public from other costs of the war. They're separated from it, right? I mean, Some of the stuff that Americans see on TV, I mean, I don't know the numbers, but a very small percentage of Americans serve. So unless you have a relative or a close friend, you're not really impacted by this. You're impacted by the high price of diesel gas or other gas. So we have insulated, to a degree, the public from this, just because, not intentionally, it's just the way it has, I think, transpired with the all-volunteer force, and with the attraction of these indirect capabilities. But there's very limited things that you can do with indirect capabilities without being there on the ground.
Right. So I guess we're left with either do it diplomatically, which, again, just going back to, if Mearsheimer is right, and Iran is simply going to be able to project their force over that very narrow waterway if they want to, regardless of what we do militarily, which that's his conclusion. and that's not just his, that it appears to be widespread conclusion among a lot of analysts, then it means getting out. And as you said earlier, and I think pretty spot on, is that'll make Trump look bad going into these midterms to just get out, because then he'll have to admit, yeah, Iran gets its way. So this reminds me of, in his first term, he said a lot about getting out of Afghanistan, but didn't do it. And he left it to the next guy. And to his credit, in my opinion, Joe Biden got out of Afghanistan pretty early on in his presidency, and then was attacked for it because it was not the clean, it was messy. Trump didn't do it. He talked about doing it and didn't do it. I'm wondering if now we have another situation where he knows that that's the only way to open that strait all the way back up, is to just leave, but doesn't want to do it himself and wants to leave it to the next guy, which that's 2.5 years from now.
I mean, that's not.
And this is hard on troops. This is hard on the troops. It's been reported in the Navy Times and Stars and Stripes and the Military Times now. There's on the aircraft carrier, the USS Lincoln.
Sure.
There have been sailors who have fortunately been prevented by their fellows from appeared they were going to jump overboard, which is essentially suicide from that height. And there's been other reports of self-harm and family members trying to get a hold of their relatives on board. The mail has slowed down, communication has slowed down. They've been deployed at sea since November, which I've read is a record length of deployment for an aircraft carrier. So how is this, there's material effects to the well-being of the troops, even though they're not in combat.
True. Well, they are in combat.
Okay.
Those sailors are in combat. And it is the Lincoln, I've seen those reports, is actually doesn't hold the record yet for aircraft deployment. It was the Gerald Ford, that's predecessor, that was, I think, there till May of this past year. My memory serves correct. But and I'm no Navy sailor. But these deployments, this is what U.S. Navy sailors train for, and to be at sea for a long period of time, it is tough duty to do that. And I don't know what the average aircraft deployment length is, but it's certainly less than this, and there's probably a reason for that, to look after just the morale, and at least keep up the morale as much as possible. I mean, it is a wartime zone, and so morale is going to be affected. These are tough jobs. I don't, of course, it is not, it's a tragedy whenever any person attempts to take their own life. And there's a support network, hopefully, in every single one of these instances that can help that sailor, through that situation. So I don't discount the reports from families and inquiries from Congress going into this, but this is why we have Congress too, right? So this is, part of overlooking, well-being of the force to a certain degree when it's executing combat missions, which are going to be tough. They're not, there's always a threat you do not come back from these operations when you go to war. Unfortunately, that is just part of the game and it's part of the job. But hopefully that I have read reports that the aircraft carrier at the Lincoln is rotating out, and that there's another carrier group coming from the Pacific to rotate in. I can't remember the name of the new one going in off the top of my head, but there is a rotation about to occur.
Okay, well, hopefully that happens soon for those troops.
Yep.
I mean, and as you mentioned, I mean, when wars happen, people do die. Obviously, lots of Iranians have died, but so far reported 18 U.S. service members have died since this conflict started. 4 of them more recently after the MOU was signed. So the administration is arguing that those 4 don't count as war deaths since the MOU was signed, which that would be the 3 that died on the base that was hit by a missile in Jordan, and then a service member in Iraq who died. They were in proximity to a diffusion that went wrong and got hit by shrapnel, as I understand, in Iraq. So this is having, consequences to service members on the ground, obviously, and at sea. I'm wondering, because one of the arguments, you mentioned the word jingoism before. When I was young, younger than I am now, Iraq, the war in Iraq, was going on when I was going off to college, and there was a lot of jingoism back then, and that war was. They spent months selling that war and getting the U.S. public behind that war, and for those voices that were against that war back then, first of all, they were a lot quieter. Public sentiment was much more in favor of the president and the war effort back then. And one of the things they said, and since you did serve, I would like to kind of know.
Yeah.
I would like to know what your feelings about this were. But we on the home front were told that being in opposition to the war, in and of itself, caused a more morale problem for the troops that were over there. Like, not having the support of the public in and of itself caused a morale problem for the troops over there. And now we have a war that began with very little public support and just has less and less every day. What is the dynamic there? How is public sentiment at home perceived? How does that, what impact does that have?
It always has an impact. We live in a free country. People can consume their news from whatever. And everyone has an opinion. And that's not going to change, hopefully. So everyone knows that there's going to be people who are against it. I think in the military, we know sometimes that we're sent off to do unpopular things. And your own personal judgment about the war should not interfere with the mission, the collective mission of getting the job done and taking care of your fellow soldier. And if it does, then you shouldn't be in the military. And that's okay, to know your limits. No one's forcing you to join the military. No one's twisting your arm. It's a volunteer profession. So I think, there's a degree of people self-select into that profession, knowing they could do things that they don't personally agree with, as long as it's not something illegal or immoral, or against the law of, armed conflict. But yeah, I mean, there are support networks, and I say support networks, there are units, and when I went to Iraq, I was a company commander, and you just learn to get to know your soldiers, and what's going on at home. And soldiers, fight for each other. They fight for their team, keep their team intact. It's, at least in my experience, less sometimes about the ideology of the fight. It's to make sure your team comes back in one piece. So it's imperfect, but it's it's a team mission, and everyone has to know the role that they play on that team to get things done. So that's how we approached it, and I think there's always going to be noise, but that's part of the job, and just I think the closer you understand your soldiers and their families and what's going on, the more you're able to sort of create those tight bonds and treat each other as family, not just a team, but you're really family.
Right. And so while would you say it might sting sometimes if you see news reports about low low support
Yeah,
for what they're doing.
absolutely.
But they still, but people in the military still understand that, that's like, it may just very well be unpopular.
Yeah, I think it reaches I have not been in an instance where you're fighting a wholly unfavorable war. But it stings. I'm sure that stings. And I think, my dad did. He fought in Vietnam and came back, and people, were spitting on soldiers. And, these soldiers were just being sent off to, at
Right? There
somebody
was a
else's
draft
orders.
then.
They were drafted, So, completely different dynamic. And so thankfully we've come way forward of that. We've really, I think, progressed to where we recognize that our military is a professional force, and a professional force means something. That means that they're, doing the job of our elected leaders. And so if there's a problem with the military doing their job, there's probably a problem with our elected leaders, and the missions they give them. And so thankfully that's held up. I do privately, and now I guess publicly with you, do worry sometimes that this administration has taken a different definition of loyalty, and superseding loyalty to the Constitution. But we know that there's unpopular wars, and I think unfortunately that's not, that's something in the military plans that you want to forestall with good, proper military planning, and to show that you can overwhelmingly succeed, that you've thought about all the different variables coming into this plan. We call this, I'm paraphrasing, the Powell Doctrine, Colin Powell, where before you commit U.S. forces, you want to make sure that you have overwhelming support, overwhelming force, all the resources at your disposal to meet your objectives. There should be no doubt in your mind that you can accomplish this task. But we have unfortunately not adhered to that doctrine these days.
No, and I would argue that Colin Powell did not adhere to that when he sold the Iraq War. But that's me being political.
Yeah. That was that was an unfortunate turn of events for him as well. Yeah, and for the country.
So I want to broaden this a little bit, because since we were talking about Ukraine and Russia before, something happened a couple of weeks ago that scared me a little bit, and maybe you can give me some perspective on this. But Ukraine started targeting Iranian shipping, supposedly because Iran and Russia were trading in the Caspian Sea via tankers, via ships. And they were saying that but it went beyond that, because Zelensky, knowing that he has an audience of one in the United States that he's trying to win over, namely the president, he's saying, well, look, this fight is the same fight. Our struggle is the same struggle. If you help us, you're actually helping yourself with Iran, essentially trying to broaden the scope of his war to include Iran. And that scared me, to try and globalize that conflict into another conflict. And that got me thinking about, and I even said this on our program, I was saying that the elements of World War I and all the different because World War I, you could argue, and I would argue, that the conflict between Serbia and Austria-Hungary was one thing, and the Germans the German military aristocracy, I should say, purposefully broadened it to include Russia and France and Germany and everything else, and became World War I out of that conflict between Serbia and Austria-Hungary. Am I right to be nervous? Am I taking things too far? What do you think? How do you think that Ukraine element, trying to broaden it, is playing or might play?
I don't think I'm at the point where I'm nervous about this intervention on behalf from Ukraine. I think, and I don't know how exactly the Ukrainian presidential apparatus and their military command authority made this decision, what motivated it. But I would presume that they were trying to show Iran and Russia that this shipping route is not a safe shipping route that you should think about. You should think about before you start shipping military supplies over the Caspian Sea between Iran and Russia, and to deny that the illusion that this was a safe supply route for either Russia or Iran, depending on which way the military traffic's going. But Iran, I would say, also has been an indirect participant in the war on Ukraine for the last 4 years.
Okay. How so?
Because they supplied a massive amount of Shahed drones to Russia, which were then subsequently launched onto Ukraine, and then subsequently set up a whole Russian defense industry to make these on their own and improve them, basically upgrading the Shahed drone from the original Iranian designs, and now producing their own Shahed drones on Russian territory with the original IP from Iran, and launching these in massive amounts and massive quantities on Ukraine. So Iran is no angel on the war on Ukraine, and so I don't think the Ukrainians were thinking of this in a way of expanding the conflict. Politically, it probably looks good for Ukraine to show this to our country, but again, who knows? And I would not be concerned about escalating that direction, because one, that Iran doesn't have the military capacity to start lobbing missiles at Ukraine. They could, but their objective is pretty clear: is to destabilize and to show the United States cannot meet their objective. And so anything else outside of that, I think, would be a distraction.
Right. While I wasn't concerned about Iran firing back, I guess I was more concerned about like Ukraine using that as an opportunity to get more parties involved in more conflict.
Oh yeah, I don't think Ukraine's interested in expanding the conflict. I think Ukraine was out to signal to Iran and Russia that this is not a safe supply route, that you should think twice about before shipping supplies across the Caspian.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Very much hope.
Kind of,
that's
right?
I mean, it was scary to see that connecting it, because hopefully it doesn't. I mean, obviously they need to protect themselves from Russian drones. There's no question. But is the damage already done? As you said, Russia now has the capacity to manufacture these drones. It may be too little, too late. But I think it was more Zelensky going to Trump to try and get Trump to do more in Ukraine by using Iran as the excuse to do it. What worried me.
Pure speculation on my part. I mean, it could be just a signal to Trump to show, look, we're in it with you, and we have a common enemy, if you will. Technically, we do, because Iran is, like I cited before, has been supplying military weaponry to Russia in its fight against Ukraine for many years. Whether or not that justifies an allied response is a whole other matter. I don't think we're there.
Has there been any significant change in that conflict in Ukraine, Russia?
No. The big developments of the summer for Ukrainians is just a change in military leadership. Their Minister of Defense and their Chief of the Armed Forces, Fedorov and General Syrskyi, have both been let go of their positions. Fedorov was let go first, ostensibly because of strategic differences in prosecuting the war, and then subsequently faced a huge or sparked a huge outcry in Ukrainian public against General Syrskyi, who they thought was the more appropriate target of any dismissals because of General Syrskyi's well-known sort of I wouldn't say brutal, but very mechanical approach to prosecuting the war, and at times has been accused of not putting as much importance on soldiers' lives as he could have. That's a whole nother discussion. But it was probably overdue. It was probably time, anyways, for a change in leadership, at least at the military level. Syrskyi has been in command since Zaluzhny left in, I want to say, early 2023. So it's been, 3 years just about that General Syrskyi's been in charge, and so in many ways he's done a very admirable job of holding the line. But there has not been a lot of progress territorially along the front line. This war is still predominantly fought in the air, with ballistic missiles being launched at various locations across Ukraine. And as we've both seen with reports of, just Ukrainians' inability to intercept those ballistic missiles. And this is where it comes back to our initial discussion about the slow supplies of interceptors. This is where not only our industrial complex has not caught up with the need for these Patriot interceptors, but the entire global, defense industry has not caught up with this demand. There's only a handful of systems, the Patriot being one of them, that can intercept a ballistic missile coming from Russia to that degree. And so you just think about physically, it's just harder to come up with that technology, and it takes longer to do.
And it's very expensive.
There's other institutional, structural reasons that it takes so long as well. There's only a handful of defense industry competitors in the Beltway that make these kind of exquisite systems. And that lack of competition in the defense space means that these production times, I think, have dragged on way too long. And so, as one, I think, generally positive thing that this administration has done is infused a lot of cash into the defense industry and encouraged a lot of smaller manufacturers to come up and make these weapons, and to increase the competition level between defense competitors for weaponry that the United States needs.
Well, there's no question that industry is awash in cash at the moment.
Oh yeah, yeah, for better or worse, right?
That.
For better or worse. So,
and yes, and Ukraine has been screaming for help with intercepting ballistic missiles, and there's no help to be given. And because, again, like a year ago, in that Midnight Hammer, huge numbers of interceptors were used then, and this is something the GCC, the Gulf countries, have been screaming about. Gulf cooperation countries were screaming about during the initial part of this war when they were getting hit, is the U.S. weren't using the interceptors on behalf of the Gulf countries. They were only really using them on behalf of Israel. And so that's created another cleavage in relations and all those kind of things. It's not pretty. It's just
no, it's not pretty.
Ugly,
but
scene.
All these, it's very ugly. The United States, as much as sometimes it says, cannot be everywhere all at once at the same time. So it is, it's a reality that the defense production can't meet all that demand, nor should it, really. For Ukraine, for example, we've supplied probably around, I think there was a open source reporting from Center for Strategic International Studies, I think, did a report on this. I know they did a report on this, and it estimated around probably 600 Patriot interceptors going to Ukraine, various PAC-2 or MSC variants going there, with, justifiably. And I was in the Pentagon when we were delivering these critical interceptors to Ukraine. They needed them. But that's still a fraction of the total inventory. And that was done at least 3 years ago now. Started to do that. And so the question sometimes I think I have in my mind is, what is Europe doing to make that capability themselves, to help shore up the gap, and interceptor gap, that's going to be needed not only for Ukraine, but for their own capitals and for their own, key terrain, should the conflict escalate. So, Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, it's extremely, I think, stupid to have one company make all the ballistic interceptors you need in the world. Now, granted, there are other European technologies. It's just, my point is that they have not developed fast enough, and they haven't put enough resources into those interceptors to make them at scale, at the scale that they're needed. And I would say the same thing about the Gulf Cooperation Council. But that's a whole nother, that's geopolitics, and that's that, in a way, the way that we have chosen to structure our relationship with some of those countries in the Persian Gulf.
Well, it's also corporate capitalism. I mean, I'm sure these companies are very protective of their fiefdoms. They have essentially monopolies on these things. Why would they want to give them up?
Exactly.
So we're definitely between a rock and a hard place. I hope that, we don't even really have clarity on what's going on. And, when the only information we're getting is that Trump tweet where he just says everything's great and we're in charge, nobody believes. I was like, who?
Well, I bet you some people probably believe it.
Well, okay, fine. I will grant you that. Yes,
exactly.
But nobody in the Gulf believes it. Nobody in Iran believes it. I'm sure nobody in Israel believes it. Nobody in Ukraine believes it. Nobody in Europe believes it. You're right. You said initially he's saying this for consumption among his fan base in the United States of America, and that's pretty much it. And he knows that too, I'm sure, I assume. Maybe it's not safe to assume that, but and then obviously a whole nother conversation, and we do need to have it. We've been talking about having a conversation about, the leadership at the Pentagon itself and Pete Hegseth and what's been going on there. That's a whole nother kettle of fish, as it were. There's just a lot, and the reality is like people don't necessarily when people make political decisions, say at the ballot box, foreign affairs are not the first thing that go through people's minds, but foreign affairs obviously have massive impacts, especially what's going on right now, have massive impacts on people's day-to-day lives. We started out talking about how the closure of the strait and the slowdown in oil moving around is causing people's prices to go up and causing things to go up. And unfortunately, the military is caught in the middle of all this, a political football. And they're being used by politicians in ways that are quite obviously ineffective. Again, the strait was open on February 27th, completely open to all traffic. And now it's been closed ever since, largely. Little trickles coming through, which frankly also helps out Iran because they're getting their own oil out.
Yep.
So thanks so much, JP, for, trying to help me get some idea straight in my head. And I know there's no way to completely clear things up. There's just no way. And you'd have to have way more information than you could possibly have, not having access to the insider stuff, but it seems that there's enough public information to kind of get the general gist of things. And I really appreciate you helping smooth some of the rough edges out so we can get a sense of what the hell is going on.
Good discussion, Sam. Always happy to talk. And, it's a good discussion when more questions also pop up in the course of the conversation. So no easy solutions, and definitely a complicated period for our country. Very complicated, to say the least.
And as things change, we'll I'm sure we'll talk about it again. So
yep,
again,
I hope so.
Very, very much appreciated, JP, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Sam. Anytime. Thank you.